Good afternoon, everyone. We want to take the time to thank you for joining us today on the Heirs Property Relending Program webinar. My name is Kanika Calvin Davis, and I serve as one of the FSA National Outreach Specialists, and my portfolio covers this new Heirs Property Relending Program. With me today, I have my colleague Herbert Brown, who is on detail to our office. He has been assisting us with developing outreach strategies for the Heirs Property Program as well. We want to bring you greetings on behalf of our administrator, Zach Ducheneau, as well as our outreach director, Jay Latrice Hill. If anyone is having any difficulties hearing the presentation today, we encourage you to dial in using the click audio button that should be appearing there on your screen. So we'll just go ahead and jump into things today. So here we have just an overview of the different topics that we'll be discussing today as we go through the webinar. As you look through these topics that we'll be discussing, if you're a note taker, we want you to just breathe easy, as at the end of this webinar, we will be providing the PowerPoint slides as well as the audio. So you'll have an opportunity to see all of this information again, and anything that you did not catch, it'll be available at the conclusion of this webinar. So we're going to jump right into our first topic here that talks about funding authorization. So Section 5014 of the 2018 Farm Bill authorized the Secretary to implement a relending program that provides loans to eligible entities to serve as lenders that will relend the funds to individuals and entities for the purposes of assisting heirs to resolve the ownership and succession issues on their farms. As many of you might be aware of, this program was announced last week. However, the final rule for this program is still pending as of today. So what does this mean? As we are waiting for the final rule to be published, the information that we're talking to you about today is still, it's out there within that pending rule. However, again, we're still waiting for the final rule to be published. So that final rule will be published within the Federal Registry, and the final rule that is published is used to establish the policy for the program, and it provides the eligibility, the funding, and the specifics that are related to the Heirs Property Relending Program. The pending rule was included in last week's press release, so again, if you got that information, you've probably already been able to see that pending rule, but we are still waiting as of today for the final rule to be published. The 2018 Farm Bill authorized $10 million in budget authority for each of the fiscal year from 2019 through 2023 to carry out this Heirs Property Relending Program. There is a provision in the program that allows for any funds to roll over after the end of each fiscal year. So program funds that are allocated in a previous year are available for use and included as part of the $67 million that is available under the recent announcement. So what is heirs property? FSA considers heirs property to be land that has been passed down to subsequent generations via interstate succession, that is, without a will or via a will that divides the real estate assets equally among all heirs. When a landowner dies without a last will and testament or without an estate plan, state law then at that time determines which heirs or classes of family members inherit the land of the deceased and the ownership share for each of those heirs. This form of property ownership results in the land being owned in common by all heirs at law. This means that each one owns a fractional interest in this land. So as a result, because of the absence of a clear title, it prevents the owner who farms the land and pays the real estate taxes from gaining the assets that they need to the legal, financial, and managerial transactions needed to effectively manage the land. So again, this is how FSA defines the heirs property. So as we move on to our next slide here, let's talk about what is the Heirs Property Relending Program. So again, the Heirs Property Relending Program provides the funds that are needed for eligible entities to relend with the purpose of assisting heirs to resolve any of those ownership and succession issues that we talked about on their farmland within multiple owners. So once USDA Farm Service Agency selects the lenders, the heirs will then have the ability to apply directly to those lenders for loans and assistance that they may need. Again, we want to point out that the Heirs Property Relending Program is a loan, and as such will need to be repaid as directed by the 2018 Farm Bill. So why a relending program? The heirs property issues have long been a barrier for many producers and landowners as they try to assess USDA programs and services. And this relending program provides access to capital to help producers find a resolution to these issues. We know some of you might be aware of how FSA programs work. So again, by us having these relenders, it's kind of unique how the heirs property relending program works. The Heirs Property Relending Program is another example of how we here with the USDA is working to rebuild the trust with America's farmers and ranchers. To prepare for this program, 2 listening sessions were held in addition to the Farm Bill listening sessions. One was held in partnership with Alcorn State University's Socially Disadvantaged Farmers and Ranchers Policy Center that's housed in Mississippi, and the other one was hosted in D.C. Public comments at this time were collected and considered during the development of the Heirs Property Relending Program. So before we go any further, we think it's very important that as we get ready to do this webinar today, Herbert and ourselves, we want to ensure that you understand the different terms and the definitions by which FSA applies to those terms. So right now I'm going to have Herbert to jump in and join us here as we get ready to dig a little deeper into the Heirs Property Relending Program. Herbert, do you mind going over some of these definitions and some more details about how the program will work?
Sure, Kanika. I'll be glad to go over some of the language and definitions before we dig into the program particulars and specifics. So let's start with intermediaries. What exactly is an intermediary? A intermediary lender is a lender who relends funds from USDA to heirs. They are called an intermediary because they will work with heirs and work with USDA. So an intermediary lender could be a cooperative, could be a credit union, or a nonprofit organization. An intermediary lender must be certified as a community development financial institution and have the experience and the capability in making and servicing agriculture and commercial loans that are similar in nature. Next, we'll take a look at ultimate recipient. What is an ultimate recipient? An ultimate recipient is an individual or entity that receives a loan from an intermediary itself. This person will be receiving the funds from the intermediaries from the Heirs Property Relending Program revolving loan fund. So these ultimate recipients are required to be individuals or legal entities, and they have to have the authority to incur debt and resolve ownership and succession issues among multiple farm owners. Also, in order to be an ultimate recipient, you must be a family member or an heir at law related by blood or marriage to the previous owner of the property. So you have to be in the family to be considered an ultimate recipient to gain funds to help control your land ownership issues. Also, the ultimate recipients must agree to complete a succession plan. That's an important topic that we must address, that everyone who becomes an ultimate recipient of these heirs property relending funds, they must agree and have a estate or succession plan created to be successful and receive these funds. All right, next we will talk about the definition of a succession plan. Simply put, a succession plan is a general plan that addresses the continuation of the farm, and it may include agreements or strategies to address the business asset transfers of that piece of land. So we must have a succession plan in order to participate in this heirs property relending program. So now we'll talk a little bit about intermediary eligibility and funding. Intermediaries must be certified as a community development financial institution to operate as a lender. The applicant and the member of that intermediary must be a U.S. citizen. That's one requirement to be an intermediary. An intermediary must also have 5 years of experience in assisting SDA farmers and ranchers, or limited resource farmers, or even new and beginning farmers, or even rural businesses, cooperatives, or credit unions. They must also have the capability in making and servicing agriculture and commercial loans that are similar in nature to the heirs property relending program. An intermediary must also have the legal authority necessary to carry out loan purposes and to obtain and provide security and repay for that proposed loan. And also, they must demonstrate their ability and willingness to repay the loan based on the financial condition, the managerial capabilities, and other resources. So, although the ultimate recipients have to repay the loan to the intermediary must be in such shape that they're able to repay funds to USDA. So let's talk a little bit about the terms. For each application period, loans to intermediaries will not exceed $5 million. The interest rate, it will be a fixed rate, and it will go over a term of 1% or less. The repayment term for these HPRP loans, it will not exceed 30 years, and it will be established in an annual payment. FSA requires that these intermediaries have experience in working with socially disadvantaged or beginning farmers, as I said in the last slide. But the federal statute states that preference is given to intermediaries with not less than 10 years of experience in serving socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers. There will also be preference given to intermediaries located in states that have adopted the Uniform Partition of Heirs Property Act. Intermediaries will be required to determine the rates and the terms and the payment structure for loans to ultimate recipients, and these terms must be in amounts sufficient to cover the cost of operating and sustaining the revolving loan fund. So the intermediary must create their own terms in order to operate and do business as they disperse these loans to the ultimate recipients. The intermediary must clearly and publicly disclose the loan terms and the conditions to qualified ultimate recipients. So all intermediaries have to put out the information of the loan terms to the ultimate recipients so they can know the conditions of the loan. We will also have a separate workshop with farm loan specialists who are managing this program for different applicants once this rule has been published in the Federal Register. In that workshop, we'll go into a little bit more detail and learn about the specific requirements and what is needed to apply for this program. So we're looking forward to giving this additional training and providing the nuts and the bolts details of how to apply and what's yet to come. So the application period for intermediaries, it would open 3 weeks after it's published in the Federal Register. So we don't have too long now, but in 3 weeks after it's posted in the Federal Register, the application period will begin. So here in this slide, we'll cover some of the common questions. This is a common question of how can these funds be used? These funds can be used to buy out fractional interests among tenants in common and by other heirs who own the land jointly. So if you have property that are owned by multiple owners, one or more owners can come together and buy out the other owners to help clear out the title issues in the heir property situations. These funds can also pay for costs associated with developing that succession plan. It can go towards closing costs. It can go towards title searches and legal fees. It can go towards surveys and appraisals for the land. So ultimately, these funds can be utilized in a way that would help these heirs property owners clear up their land issues and move forward with having a clear title to that land. So now that we talked a little bit about the eligibility requirements for the intermediaries, we're going to talk a little bit about the requirements for the ultimate recipients. So some of the eligibility requirements for the ultimate recipients is that it can be an individual or a legal entity with the authority to incur debt and resolve ownership and succession of a farm that's owned by multiple owners. So this individual entity have to be able to be in a position to incur debt and to resolve the ownership issues. They must also, again, agree to complete a succession plan as a result of receiving a loan from the intermediary. A little bit more detail about the loans for these ultimate recipients. These loans that the ultimate recipients receive, it cannot exceed the loan limit for what we call a direct farm ownership loan, which is currently at $600,000. The interest rate will be set by the intermediary within the limits established by the intermediary's relending plan, which will be approved by FSA. And the repayment period for these ultimate recipients will not exceed 30 years. So here we'll talk a little bit about what the process looks like in this infographic. To begin, the application period opens 3 weeks after the final rule has been published. The intermediaries would then submit an application to FSA to become an intermediary lender. USDA will move forward in selecting and announcing intermediary lenders, and these selectees will be listed on farmers.gov/heirs/relending after the results are announced. Next, the eligible heirs would then be able to apply directly to one of the selected intermediary lenders for loans and assistance. Again, these loans will be used to resolve title issues by financing the purchase or consolidation of property interests and any financing costs with creating a succession plan. Some intermediary lenders may be able to provide some of these services, so that may be a benefit as well. Next, the heirs would then repay the loan to the intermediary lender at the established rates and terms. Finally, the intermediary lenders would then repay USDA at the established rate and term. And this will complete the cycle of the heirs property relending process.
Thank you, Herbert, so much. I know that you gave us so much information there and allowed us to understand a lot of the terms that are associated with the heirs property relending program. And right now, I just kind of want to talk about the stakeholder toolkit. So again, we know that in this overview that we've given you all that we have provided a lot of information. However, we have the stakeholder toolkit that's out there that's available on this website that's shown right there, the farmers.gov/heirs/relending. And this toolkit will assist you with not only understanding the heirs property relending program, but amplifying and spreading the message to others of the availability that comes under the heirs property relending program. Within this toolkit, you'll find some key messaging points. You'll find news articles that have been released that are related to the heirs property relending program. You'll find as for those who are interested in being relenders and are selected to be a lender, you'll find those posts that you can use for some social media activity so that you can get the word out and let those heirs know that, hey, I'm here, and just Again, this is just some tools that we give you so that you have that information available for you. Also within this toolkit, we want to ensure that everybody is aware of where our FSA local offices are. So we have that FSA locator that's there, as you can see on your screen, the www.offices.usda.gov. Again, this full toolkit helps you, and it helps us to also make sure that that message gets out there, that as we know, this heirs property has been a big issue that has been going on for a while, and us within the USDA is, and along with our stakeholders and partners and individuals like yourself who will be selected to be lenders, we are working together to ensure that those heirs know that, hey, this information is available out here, this program is available out here. Again, it is not a grant. However, these loan funds can be utilized, and we want them to know how to get in contact with those lenders that have been selected in order that they can apply for this funding. So, FSA, we would like to point out that our FSA state outreach coordinators are going to be partnering with these intermediaries. So if you're not familiar with FSA outreach program, we want to just make sure that you know that there are state outreach coordinators located in every state. We have there listed the public website where those outreach coordinators can be found, their emails and their contact information as far as their phone numbers. And we want to ensure that we let you know that we will work with you to ensure that your organizations are aware of the application period once it opens. As we said early in this webinar, we know that that final rule has not been published just yet. However, these FSA state outreach coordinators will ensure that, you know, that information is out there once the application period does open, as well as through that, going back to that process chart that Herbert referenced earlier. When that period opens up for those interested heirs to apply, we will work to make sure that that message is amplified, that they are aware of when they can apply for those loan funds. And once those approved intermediaries are selected, again, our outreach coordinators will assist them with notifying the public and notifying those heirs and notifying those organizations who will be implementing the program. FSA will soon announce the organizations that are approved for cooperative agreements, who will also assist to provide further outreach in order to connect those heirs with those with those lenders that once they are selected and approved. So now, as we get ready to kind of wrap some things up, we know that that you all clearly have a lot of questions, and as we know earlier, Herbert made us aware that there will be a more technical sessions that will be going forward. Today was just more of an overview just to get you familiar with the Heirs Property Relending Program. However, we will try to take a couple of questions right now. So, Herbert, do you have any questions that you see over there?
Yes, I do. So let's jump into the first question here. The first question is, will heirs and intermediary lenders need to repay the loans?
Yes, this is a really good question, and thank you, Herbert, for picking that out. Again, as I stated kind of earlier, and Herbert stated it as well, this is a loan, so as such, heirs must repay the loan to those lenders, and then those lenders, again, have to repay the funds that they have received. They have to repay those back to the USDA.
Thank you, Kanika. Next question is, what happens if the heir and or intermediary lender defaults on the loan?
Well, I think it's important to understand that FSA plans to fully work with those lenders to attempt to resolve any default issues that might come about. Lenders, they will establish those loan servicing options for those ultimate recipients, and again, those ultimate recipients are the heirs. Because of those loan agreements that have been approved by FSA as part of the application process, it's very important that any type of default issues that might come up, that those lenders will make it a priority to make sure that they work with them in order to get that resolved.
All right, so the next question is, why is this a loan program and not a grant?
Well, I think it's important to point out that under the 2018 Farm Bill, we as the USDA through this Farm Bill were directed to make the loans eligible to entities to relend the funds to individuals or other entities to assist those heirs with the any type of undivided ownership interest that they might have that need to be resolved. In addition to resolving these ownership issues, we also got the authority under this 2018 Farm Bill to assist with succession planning on the farmland that had multiple owners. So again, because of the way the 2018 Farm Bill was set up and it directed the USDA to make these funds available, that Farm Bill directed us to make this, and it under the Farm Bill terms, it is a loan and not a grant.
All right. Next question is, why should I get a loan from an intermediary lender if FSA can also provide loans for resolving title issues?
Okay, thanks, Herbert. That is definitely a good question to be inquiring about. So I think it's important to understand that the Heirs Property Relending Program allows those heirs to work with organizations that they are comfortable with. I think we talked earlier in the webinar about just as a part of the USDA rebuilding the public's trust, because of the uniqueness in how the Heirs Property Relending Program is working by having those intermediary lenders there, that's a part of us rebuilding that trust. So we wanted to ensure that that heirs that come in to participate in this loan program, that they have the opportunity to work with organizations that they're comfortable with, and that understand their unique situations. We understand that there are a lot of complications that can come up with heirs as they look to get these to get their heirs property issues resolved. So by allowing them to work with these intermediary lenders, it allows them the ability to pick someone who they feel comfortable with.
Thanks, Kanika. Great explanation. The next question is, why do intermediary lenders get the loan at 1% interest, yet charge heirs a higher interest rate?
Yeah, so I think as we just think about business in general, we understand that there is a cost associated with doing business. So those lenders, they determine the rate, the terms, and the payment structures for the loans that are provided to the heirs. And because of this way that this is established, we allow them to set the interest rate to an amount that covers their costs of operating and sustaining that loan. Again, just looking at the costs associated with doing business, and by allowing them to do it this way, it allows them to, not at a high cost, but it allows them to kind of recoup some of the cost that is associated with them by being a relender for this program, being the intermediary lender for this Heirs Property Relending Program.
All right. The next question reads, are there items heirs cannot use the loans for?
Yeah, I think as we think about just any traditional loan type programs, we know that there are things in general that you can use the loan funds for and things that you cannot. It's kind of no different with the Heirs Property Relending Program. So I think that we have to just keep in mind that some things that the loans cannot be utilized for are any land improvements, any developmental purposes, any acquisition or repairs of buildings, any acquisitions of personal property, payments associated to any type of operating costs, payments of finder fees. When that final rule does get published, there will be a list of other things that the funds cannot be used for. But in general, as you see just from that, it's things that's just associated with outside of helping those lenders, those heirs get their situation settled. But again, those are some things that it cannot be utilized for. And again, once that final rule is published, there'll be more clarification on that as well.
All right, thank you, Kanika. And it looks like I'll take one more question, and this question reads, what is a farm number and why would I need one?
Oh, okay. Great. So I think it's important to understand how form numbers work with FSA. So a form number just in general is required to be eligible for many of the programs that are within not just the Foreign Service Agency, but under that USDA umbrella. This includes different lending programs, disaster relief programs, even participation in county committees, price support programs, and other programs that are USDA related. This form number is unique because it almost acts like an identifier for the program participant as well as that piece of land. So by having this, that's the first step in making sure that we within the USDA Foreign Service Agency are able to identify you. So again, that form number is just one of the basic requirements for participation in many of our programs, not just the Heirs Property Relending Program. And Herbert, I do know that you mentioned that that was the last question that we kind of had time for today, and I just want to remind everybody that if one of your questions was not one of the ones that we were able to get through, excuse me, I'm getting a little tongue-tied, but if we weren't able to get to your question today as we went through this webinar, I just want you to remember that at the conclusion of this webinar that these slides will be available as well as the recording. Look for that to come out to you, and though any additional questions that were asked that we were not able to get to, we will ensure that at that time those questions will be answered. So pay attention to when that information comes out. So if you had a question that we were not able to get to within that document and within that message, you will see a response to your question at that time. Well, in order to, we just wanted to thank you again for your time, for sitting in with us today on, as we did this general overview with the Heirs Property Relending Program. Again, we hope that this gave you a good idea of how this program will work and some of the things to look forward to, some next steps, as well as just an overview of what that process will look like. Again, we thank you for your time today. Be on the lookout for that additional information with those slides that will come out later. And then, as always, if you have any questions when we send that information out, we'll have ways that you can contact us for any additional follow-ups. And again, we just want to thank you for your time today and for sitting in and listening to us. And we hope that this was able to give you a good idea to get you excited about the possibility of being able to participate here in this Heirs Property Relending Program. And on behalf, again, of Herbert and myself and the staff here within the Outreach Office and the USDA in whole, we thank you again today for your time.